Alright, so Microsoft has responded to the whole Xbox One 1080p thing. Let's hear it, Microsoft. But before we get to this video, here's the question of the day. Okay, so apparently this week, there was a comment from the developer of Sniper Elite, Rebellion Games actually. They suggested that the Xbox One eSRAM or eSRAM might be the one to blame for the games not having a 1080p or not being able to run in 1080p. I think they said something like, oh, it's too small or something along those lines. It basically limits the ability of the Xbox One. But Xbox exec Phil Harrison has responded on the Twitter saying that this is not the case. You know, this is clearly not the case. And he also mentioned, he gave examples. Forza 5 and Kinect Sports Rivals. You know, these games run on 1080p. So he's like, well, you know, we do have 1080p games. The Xbox One is capable of 1080p. And yeah, this is a long-running controversy now, and it keeps popping up. I mean, I understand that this is always, these articles tend to be, you know, sort of glamorized, especially by websites like GameSpot that are, you know, desperate to bring up some sort of beef between these companies. They're always trying to put the two, the followers of each system against each other. But it does raise a pretty good point. I mean, Xbox One isn't as common with a 1080p 60 FPS as much as the PS4. I mean, the PS4 is capable, and from everything I've seen, it seems like the PS4 performs better. It's a stronger system, and it does handle 1080p and 60 FPS, at least higher resolution than the Xbox One overall. And they gave examples here. Sony has time and again labeled the PS4 as the most powerful console ever created. And many high-profile multiplats like Battlefield 4, Tomb Raider, and COD Ghosts perform better on the PS4 visually. And this is in comparison to Microsoft's Xbox One. And there's another comment from the senior producer of Sniper Elite 3, a guy named Jean-Baptiste Bocato, said he's sure that the Xbox One development process will get better over time. And he said he basically did the putting over Xbox One thing, I guess, you know, just to make up for the other comments that the other guy said. He's like, well, there's stuff you can do on the Xbox One. You know, it's a multimedia thing, and it's more hub-centric, and it's more complex, so it's gonna get better over time, and you know, we're not worried anymore, and you know, PS4 is just a games machine, but the Xbox One is multimedia. And he basically implied that, you know, kind of bury the PS4 a little bit and put over the Xbox One a bit more, like, well, you know, at least the Xbox One is got more things going for it. Like, it can do more multimedia things going on. It's a really strange debate, man. I mean, it's so fascinating how this thing has played out so far in the past few months that these systems have been released. I mean, like the Titanfall controversy. Yeah, this was the big story yesterday, and basically Titanfall is not running at 1080p. It's like running below that. Last I checked, I think it was like 792p. Like the beta version is 700 something p resolution, but it might get upscaled. Probably will get upscaled to 900p by the time it comes out, like the final version of the game. That's the last time I checked the particular article. So Titanfall getting some flack on the Xbox One, mind you. That's the Xbox One version. It's not 1080p. And I mean, you know, Sony has already put over the PS4 many times, saying that the system is the one that developers want, because it's basically has better visual performances, But Microsoft, on the other hand, has mentioned that it gets way too overblown, and it's, you know, maybe it's not such a big deal. I mean, I'm always interested in the comments too, like the people that try to either defend the Xbox One or, you know, try to just attack it completely, but with logic, you know, because I'm always for logic. I understand logic. Here's one comment from this guy, Zero Fallout 1, and he goes, Forza and Sports Connect, or Connect Sports, are not the examples to put out dealing with 1080p. That's like saying Mario runs at 1080p on the Wii U, assuming he's what he's talking about. That's not a real achievement. Yeah, that's yeah, I agree with that. I noticed that. It's like, okay, well, those two are exclusives, right? The Kinect Sports game and the Forza game. And they would be 1080p on the Xbox One. They're both exclusives for the Xbox One, so it kind of is, it's interesting that the exclusives are at least getting 1080p, but why is it that the multiplats aren't? What's the problem with the multiplats? Why are developers not able to basically have the same performance on their games compared to the PS4? Why are the Xbox One versions not as visually better, and how come they're lower resolution basically, and maybe even lower FPS, frames per second? Why is that the case? What is Xbox One missing? Is it really that much weaker compared to the PS4? Because bringing up those exclusives, you know, like Forza, that's understandable, and I get that it's okay, wow, impressive, it's 1080p. But then, how good would that look on the PS4 in comparison? Is it because it's an exclusive, and we only get to see really the Xbox One version of the thing? It's limited. The example is limited. It's like back in the day when certain games would only release for the PS2, like Tekken 5, for example. That's a pretty good looking game, especially for a PS2 game, but I think it would have looked much better, or even better on the Xbox, on the original Xbox, because the Xbox was capable, clearly, of faster resolution. It was a more powerful system. And generally, overall, games, multiplats, they just look better on the Xbox, on the original Xbox, compared to the PS2. And so we never saw examples like that. Like, you know, how amazing with God of War and God of War 2 and these PS2 exclusives, how much better they would have looked on the Xbox and the original Xbox, you know? So exclusives, they're a little bit harder to kind of argue. You know, I get that they could be powerhouses, you know? I mean, it's like Uncharted looked phenomenal on the PS3, so yeah, I mean, it's not the best examples that Xbox One has, because they can't defend the multiplats that are weaker or have lower resolution or lower frames per second. And then they have the whole thing with it's a multimedia, and I like that people are also calling that out. They're like, well, who gives a shit? Like, really? You're gonna watch TV on it? Like, who cares about that? It's like I can do all of these things with my actual television. It's like the services that the Xbox One offers, all the multimedia shit it has, watching Netflix and movies and all these things, you can already do without the Xbox One. It's already available in other services, other platforms. So it's like, what is the Xbox One really offering that's, holy crap, it's worth $500? You know, that's the big point. And I think that's something that Microsoft can't really, like, defend, you know? It's like, oh yeah, Kaiser Disco was like, yeah, we don't need another device that lets you watch Netflix, or, something along those lines, you know? I kind of understand that, you know. It makes sense. He's like, you know, he's got 7 devices in his house that lets him watch Netflix, 5 that do Pandora, PS4, and any Blu-ray player will give you. So, what is the Xbox One giving us? You can watch TV on it. All you need is a TV and a cable provider that's hooked up to your TV. That's that's a very good point. I would like to hear from an Xbone owner and actually say like, yo, this stuff is the bomb. Like, yo, I'm totally like multimedia heavy right now. I don't know, man. This is... And the whole thing, you know, making their own TV series. Like, I saw another article that said something like Nas is going to produce a series with Microsoft or some shit like it. You know, the rapper Nas. I love Nas. One of my favorites from the 90s. But I was thinking to myself, I was like, who gives a shit? I don't care. Who cares? A Nas-related series or TV show or something to do with the Xbox One or Microsoft? Like, I don't care about that. It doesn't sound like it's a game. It doesn't sound like anything I'd be interested in because it's just fucking Nas, you know, just a rapper from the 90s. I don't know, man. And then you also have the Xbox One people that are like, you know, like Fryboy 101. He says, I don't give 2 craps about 1080p, 60 frames per second. The only thing I care about is if a game is fun. Graphics should never be a main priority when making a game. Sure, the Xbox One might not have much power compared to the PS4, but the games I've played I've thoroughly enjoyed, and that's all that matters to me. I will never regret getting an Xbox One. That's a good point, but then this other guy named Lone Samurai 1 made a comment, said, you guys have basically convinced yourselves that the resolution and frame rate that you're getting on the Xbox One is acceptable. Probably because you don't have another choice. It's true, you know, it's like 720p compared to 1080p is not the same. Like 1080p is better. Higher resolution is visually better. Just the same way that 4K or whatever the fuck that resolution is, that higher one, you guys have seen the 4K? It's insane. It's amazing compared to 1080p. I can only imagine what that's going to be like, you know, like 10 years from now when the new systems are 4K by default. It's crazy, actually, that some games on the Xbox One is not native 1080p. Quite a bit of them compared to PS4. Why is that? Why is that? That's fucked up, isn't it? Isn't that messed up? Oh my god. And the whole 30 frames per second thing. It's important. It is important. 60 FPS is better visually than 30 frames per second because 60 basically is a smoother looking visual presentation. It seems smoother, it looks cleaner, it looks more fluid. And here's another final comment from Untouchables 111. And he addressed the guy that said, the Sniper Elite 3 guy that said, PS4 is just a games machine. Like a dismissive, oh, it's just a games machine. Well, then he's like, yeah, well, you got the idea. That's the idea. Who needs another glorified DVR? Referring to the Xbox One. So, I think PS4 is still winning this war. It's still ahead from a quality standpoint, from a pricing standpoint, from everything. Fuck. It's amazing that Sony is destroying the Xbox One right now. And I really am curious why people would pick the Xbone over the PS4. With the exception of the ones that are obviously buying it for the exclusives. Titanfall and Forza and all these other, you know, maybe a Fable game down the road. Because at the end of the day, the multiplats perform better on the PS4. And then the PS4 has its own set of exclusives and shit, so it's curious to see like one system still getting favored over the other. And that's the fanboy mentality right there. That's like the like, it doesn't make any sense to spend $500, $100 more on a weaker system, and that had a bad reputation when it was first introduced. And I don't know what it is. I don't understand. Microsoft people, I'm not really against Microsoft, but the ones that are like loyalists, they're very, very interesting. They seem to kind of gloss over what the PS4 can offer for whatever reason. I don't know why. And then just always pick the Xbox system. And here's the answer to the question of the day.